use your powers for evil.
Evil? Your evil is mine.
Diddly dum, diddly dum, diddly dum, diddly dum, diddly dum, diddly dum, diddly dum. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm Charles Skaggs. With me, as always, my partner in crime and my partner in time, Jesse Jackson.
You know, Charles, it's almost like you've had to do this 2 or 3 times today.
We seem to be caught in a time loop.
We do. Hey,
'Cause
Charles.
This is our third attempt, thanks to the evils of Skype.
Yes, Skype. And each time Charles has gotten a little less energy. It's like, yeah, we're here.
No, this is our third time, so
Right.
The diddly dums not quite as resounding as they were in the first take.
Absolutely.
So, all right, let's try and hurry up and get through this before it crash again.
Absolutely.
But all right, so hi everybody, welcome to Next Stop Everywhere. I'm Charles and this is Jesse. You know that. Today we're going to talk about The Tomb of the Cybermen, which is a classic Patrick Troughton story from 1967, season 5 of the original series, written by Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis, the creators of the Cybermen, directed by Morris Berry. And I am dying to know what Jesse thinks of this story, especially before Skype crashes again. So.
Yeah, this was a really good one, Charles. You know, we talked a few minutes ago that due to just the stupidity or short-sightedness of BBC, a lot of the Patrick Troughton era episodes aren't available. But you know,
now more and more are becoming available because thanks to like animated reconstructions. They recently released The Underwater Menace, which was Troughton's third story. Now, they kind of did a really cheap job of that one by there's a couple of episodes that were recovered, but the other 2 weren't. So what they did is they took what's called telesnaps, which, you know, the still shots of from the episode, and they kind of, you know, like put those in chronological order and played the audio, which thankfully still survives, to get a complete story. Now, they're going to be also doing The Power of the Daleks, Patrick Troughton's first story, which is a very important story, obviously, one that's been long desired by fans like myself, and that's going to be out here in theaters here in the U.S., actually 4 days before, or 5 days, I think, before it airs on BBC America. Which is great, and I'm looking forward to us talking about that one.
Yeah, I am too. I don't know if I'm going to get. I hadn't bought my ticket yet, but if I can, I'm going to try to go see it at the big screen, and then I definitely will see it on BBC America. Remind me, this is Matt Smith's favorite Doctor, correct?
Yes, this is the one that kind of inspired his Doctor, and I think this story in particular was a big inspiration for Matt Smith when he was trying to decide on his take on the Doctor, or at least that was kind of his exposure to Doctor Who, you know, with the bow tie and the kind of the jacket as opposed to a long coat.
Yeah, and it really is, and I don't know.
And Troughton's also very eccentric, I should point out.
He is very eccentric, and he's very fun to watch. This was a fun episode. And, you know, as I said yesterday, I tweeted, you know, I'm no longer surprised that you pick a good episode for me to watch, but I'm always pleased, you know, that... So I know you have excellent taste, and I know you do a good job of going like, well, this one's a hardcore. He may not like this as much, but this was really fun. And then I know Sarah Jane will always be the number one classic companion, maybe even greatest companion of all time.
Right.
But I gotta tell you, Jamie is right there as far as I'm concerned.
Jamie is a huge favorite of mine as well. He's pretty much kind of like, I think, like apart from Sarah Jane, yeah, he's probably my number two of the classic companions. Although I would also put like Romana and Ace up there. But Canine, of course, is always great. But
And
yeah, there's just something about Jamie. Especially as I think he's, if nothing else, I think he's the definitive male companion.
and there's one of my regrets. And if I had a TARDIS,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't do it to go see every Springsteen show, and I
I
couldn't
was
go
going to say
back.
that would have to be your first
Right.
priority.
But if you had you can't do anything major, you can't manipulate the stock machine, you could just go to a small regret. Way back at the very first, um, the convention that Houston has every Memorial Day that Tom Zoller always attends, and I always go down to help his booth. I was a casual Doctor Who fan at the time, had done nothing, had not watched any old episodes, and the actor who played Jamie was there.
Yeah, Frazer Hines.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I didn't go see him. I didn't go get a signature. I didn't go to any of his panels because I had never watched an old, um, anything classic Who. And the guy who was in charge of Doctor Who, I met him at that show, and the next year is when I started helping out. But it said that Fraser wasn't very popular, that a lot of people hadn't gone and seen him. And so I now go, damn, I would have just sat there and talked to him forever because he's such a interesting companion. He's such a great character.
Mm-hmm.
And when you throw in his Outlander connections,
Right. Yeah.
that that he was an inspiration, and Jamie from Outlander was named after him.
Right.
That is a regret of mine, that as a fanboy I missed that chance.
And he actually appears in an episode of the series.
He does.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
Charles, you know that on my wish list, fanboy list, is that in the future the Doctor goes, sees an adult Jamie, and gets Jamie's granddaughter as a companion.
Right.
That would be like if someone said, okay, Jesse, make a wish, here's an extra few $1 billion, plan your own movie. This would be the Doctor Who movie I'd want to see.
I think that would be a great episode. Now, I know that Grant Morrison, comics writer Grant Morrison, when he was writing for Doctor Who magazine, he actually wrote a story with old Jamie.
Wow.
Where with the sixth Doctor, Colin Baker, going back and catching up with Jamie as an old man in Scotland.
Wow.
And so that's there. And then
I will need to find that.
Yeah, it's a really great. So yeah, try to just do a search.
Okay.
It's actually collected in one of the trade paperbacks that Panini Books did.
Okay.
But so you might be able to track it down.
Okay.
I could, if I think about it, I can get you the actual name of the trade paperback that it's in.
Good, that'd be great. Okay.
But yeah, it's really cool, and it's got some great art by John Ridgway, who was on Hellblazer, and so great story. So all right, now that we've completely digressed off the Tomb of the Cybermen,
it is just a wonderful story, and I'll go back to, you start. And I actually went online after I watched all 4 parts and said this picks up the moment after, like almost immediately after the previous story, so which is why you see Victoria coming into the TARDIS and them explaining all that.
Right. Yeah, because it picks up after the Evil of the Daleks, which sadly does not exist on video. Yeah. Although there is an episode or 2, I believe, that survive, but the complete story has not been either animated or done a telesnap version of. But yeah, so her father has just died during this encounter with the Daleks. She boards the TARDIS at the end of that story. So we kind of pick up, and it's kind of an introduction, and it's actually a a good Troughton starting point because Victoria boards the TARDIS, and it's her first adventure in time and space.
Yeah, and this episode has everything. It has this great mood. You're in a secluded place that, Capaldi's Doctor has done a lot. It seems like we've done that. There's this group of people, they're doing an expedition. You have the whole, going into a relic of this tomb, hence the name. You have the very obvious, Miss Kaftan and her partner Klieg, is that how?
Yeah, basically, yeah, Professor.
Yeah.
He's Klieg. He's
Yeah.
a really interesting character.
They radiate evil.
Yeah,
I mean, right from the beginning, you go, "Yep, that's the bad guys," and it just a great story. I almost like this one more than the last one we talked about.
Okay,
I mean,
wow.
this was really, really good.
Okay, so that's awesome. I'm looking forward to talking to you about this. So let's dive into this a little bit. First,
Okay.
I want to mention we kind of gave the overview. So why don't we just go ahead and talk about these? There's some guest stars that I want to mention in this story right off the bat because as we've kind of discussed here in the past few weeks, or that a lot of them have some notable appearances in other films and TV. So the first one I want to talk about is Klieg himself, Eric Klieg. The actor's name is George Pastel. He was in a movie you may have heard of called From Russia with Love.
Yes.
Another James Bond movie. So we've got yet another James Bond connection. And there's also another James Bond connection with Toberman, the big, strong henchman guy in this story. He's played by Roy Stewart, who actually played Quirrell Jr., son of Quirrell from Dr. No, in Live and Let Die.
Ooh, nice.
So he's actually one of the more major characters in James Bond. So that's kind of cool. And he's also appears in the John Pertwee story, Terror of the Autons, as a strongman, circus strongman. There's an actor named Cyril Shaps who plays John Viner in this story. He was in The Spy Who Loved Me. And he played a character called Lennox in The Ambassadors of Death. He played Professor Clegg in Planet of the Spiders, which was John Pertwee's final story, and a character named Archimandrite in The Androids of Tara, which was a Tom Baker story. We had Bernard Hawley, who plays Peter Hayden. He played this alien called the Axon Man in John Pertwee's story called The Claws of Axos. George Rubicek, who played Captain Hopper with his really stiff white bread voice. He was actually in Star Wars, believe it or not.
Okay.
The original movie Star Wars. You Only Live Twice. The Spy Who Loved Me, believe it or not. So he's actually, I think in Star Wars, I think he was a Imperial officer, if I recall correctly.
Oh, okay.
And this actor named Clive Marison, he played Jim Callum in the story. He was actually played a significant character, the deputy chief caretaker in the Sylvester McCoy story, Paradise Towers. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Okay, very good.
So some actors you may go, oh yeah, that guy. Well,
yeah.
So there you go. All right, so let's dive into the meat of things.
Yeah, and I did want to stress that there, sometimes classic Who or older movies or TV shows, they overact. See,
right.
Here's what we got to do, man.
Right.
And I always think of, but in this case, I really thought the acting was solid in this. I don't, the guy who played the almost Steve Trevor, captain of the ship.
Yeah, that was George Rubicek.
I especially liked him in what could have been a pretty little, I thought he did really well with that.
See, I think he's a little hammy with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it's just his voice because he just talks so seriously.
Yeah, I liked him.
It just kind of cracks me up, but yeah.
Thought him and Victoria had a little chemistry.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So let's get into this. First topic I want to talk about is Tomb Raider, the second Doctor on Telos. So if you get my sly, obvious pun there.
Yes.
It is kind of obvious, so I'll give you that one. So Patrick Troughton is the second Doctor in the story. I got to imagine you have a few thoughts.
Yeah, I thought this was really well done. A lot of times you wonder why the Doctor just doesn't get back in the TARDIS and go, right?
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm not wanted. I've got other places to go. I can go do. But in this one, once again, a good example of the TARDIS taking him where he needed to go, and then him saying, "I think we need to stick around." I've got this feeling. So yes.
Well, you get these bunch of archaeologists that are just stumbling into this tomb that the Cybermen created.
Yes.
And and the Doctor has encountered the Cybermen before, so is Jamie.
Yeah.
And it just seems like it's begging for trouble, and I think the Doctor kind of knows that.
Yeah, and he has this whole.
So he feels protective, I think, or at least obligated.
I think so too, and I also think he understands that sometimes, humans, or not necessarily just Earthlings, but just people as a whole, sometimes are just a little bit arrogant that they can use these powerful forces and manipulate them. You've seen it in so many TV shows where someone brings a demon and then and they control. And so this guy actually thinks
their arrogance.
Yes, the arrogance of, I can use this as a weapon with no thought that this may not work out well for them.
Right.
No thought.
Exactly. And then you've got the Doctor with his rivalry almost with Klieg, Eric Klieg. Because Klieg, as we find out during the course of the story, he and his little henchwoman or partner, Kaftan, they belong to what they call this Brotherhood of Logicians, who supposedly are like really, really smart, but they know they have no power. So they decide, well, hey, the Cybermen, yeah, they could be our power. And then I'm sure they'll just partner up with us because they're awesome.
And
nothing will go horribly, horribly wrong. No.
And what I find absolutely wonderful, Charles, is even in this episode, he doesn't learn his lesson. I mean, it goes really badly, and then he's like, oh, but this time, they don't have the leader. They will follow me. What are you thinking?
I know. And the Doctor, of course, I think he already can get a sense of like that Klieg is not playing with a full deck.
Yes, absolutely.
That he's just arrogant. He's going to cause trouble, and I think the Doctor has his eye on him the whole story right from the start. And he's giving him little cheap shots about like shutting up and listening instead of talking, and just it's that kind of I think he has Klieg's number and he's willing to call him on it.
I absolutely agree.
And he knows the Cybermen, so he's just like, he knows it's not going to work.
Right. And, I didn't write down as many names as I should have, and I will.
That's okay.
Also, I know, and I always can count on you. But the sniveling little guy, I'm the leader, is just a perfect little. You love seeing this guy,
Oh, you
they're
mean
just the professor, and you're like, oh, come on.
It's like I'm leading this expedition.
Yeah, like, okay, sure you are.
Yeah.
This was, and I also have been very blunt at times with Love that because it's 4 episodes, I feel like the story had to stretch.
Right.
I don't feel this one as much. I don't think the burden, or at least they did it well enough, the pacing, that I thought this was a really, there wasn't an unnecessary amount of fat in the episode. I
Right.
think this was, each of the 4 episodes kind of moved along well. They set up the pacing well. I just, like I said, this was really well done.
Yeah. I agree. I totally agree. Now there was a great moment with the second Doctor in the story where he's talking with Victoria about his family.
Oh,
So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this. To give you a little background, obviously the Doctor doesn't talk about his family very much, but there's this scene where Victoria's doubting the Doctor about whether he can remember his family because he's so ancient at 450 years
right.
old. And the Doctor's talking about that he can remember them when he wants to, and then the rest of the time they sleep in his mind, his words, because he has so much else to think about and to remember. But supposedly it feels like they're like a filing cabinet inside his head, and he can just pull them out when he wants to. So I thought it was a really sweet scene. It's not something you rarely get in classic Who, that kind of actual character development, like for the Doctor anyway.
Yeah, I read that this was one of the first times they discussed his age.
Yeah.
And I actually wrote that down, so we're going to jump ahead from favorite quotes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes,
Well,
I can when I want to. And that's the point, really. I have to really want to bring them back in front of my eyes. The rest of the time, they sleep in my mind and I forget. So will you. Oh, yes, you will. You find there's so much else to think about, to remember. Our lives are different to anyone else's. That's the exciting thing, that nobody in the universe can do what we're doing. And I actually think that that's an
thanks
insightful.
for stealing my quote, by the way.
Oh,
That's
well,
all right.
you brought it up.
I
So,
know I did bring it up, but
yeah.
I kind of wanted. Just thought it was a great scene. I kind of, since we're on the
Oh,
subject
it
of the
is
Doctor.
perfect. And the other thing is, I think that is not, that is true in real life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, I have lost, both sets of my grandparents. It's especially close to my mother's parents. I've lost my father and my stepfather, both of them who I love very much. I know you are still blessed with both your parents.
Thankfully,
And yes, and they are two
and
of the
hopefully
nice,
for many years to come.
yeah, two of the nicest people in the world. I have loved every time I've got to meet them. And, but, and you don't, you don't think, and I think that's part of your mind to move forward. You kind of put it in a filing cabinet or almost in a special place. But then when you can think of and tell stories about your friends you've lost, or when like we could talk about Leah back from Titan Talk,
Right, a friend
and
of ours. Yeah.
and there were so many stories to share about her, and seeing her at your wedding weekend, and the stories she wrote, and how obsessed she was with Nick Cardy and Aquaman, and
Right.
and she becomes alive really quick, and then you kind of move it aside. So I think that was a really touching moment, and it also sets the stage or
Mm-hmm.
the table for every future Doctor, how they play that burden of all that pain and hurt they've had, yet they move forward.
Yeah, and I think it was also the Doctor tells the story so that he can relate to Victoria, who has
Yes,
just lost her father,
right.
and kind of put her at ease about it a little bit, or at
Yeah.
least like relate to her.
And I think this is a perfect example of
Like, hey,
how,
I understand what you're going through. I've
yeah,
been through it.
and if people say, well, Doctor Who has always tried to be more than just a, and I say this with all respect, Lost in Space,
Right.
right? Like, they they are trying to do a bigger story and a better story and have some substance to it. At the same time, tell an entertaining story, and this is a great example of that.
I agree. Now, before we move on there, now since I brought up Telos, I did want to quickly mention that the Doctor returns to Telos later in Colin Baker's story, Attack of the Cybermen. So he also while he's there, he encounters this alien race called the Cryons, who were the original inhabitants of the planet. But I just kind of wanted to mention that because it's like this is not the last time we see Telos.
Okay, good.
It is kind of an important part in the Cybermen history, I guess.
And there is such a wonderful history, and that's one of the reasons why I love that we're doing this walk down history to see the depth of not just it's always the Doctor and the monsters, correct? But
Right.
It's just the idea of this and how it's gone is just fascinating.
Well, and I think as a classic fan, speaking as a classic fan, who is also a modern era fan, I think doing this, exposing you who have not seen these stories to this subject matter, I think it help you understand how someone like me appreciates the history of the series overall. Because it does relate, like these classic old stories that you think, oh, well, it's in black and white, doesn't matter. It doesn't relate to what I like because I like the modern era. Well, guess what? It actually does. And, there's a lot of story elements that get carried through across the decades to the modern era. And it's this kind of big tapestry that I think that once you start diving into the classic era stories, I think it helps you appreciate that more. Now, you could probably speak as you're being exposed to this probably better than I can. Am I wrong about this assumption?
No, I think you are spot on, Charles. I hate to be, and
I
don't
understand you're coming from a different perspective.
Yeah, but I don't know if we've ever talked about this. But this is a perfect time to bring it up. Lisa Lutz is a mystery writer, the Spellman Files.
Okay.
And in the very first book, there is a character that is a police detective. And Isabella is the main character, and she has a little sister, Ray. And Ray gets to be friends with this police detective. And he is a massive Doctor Who fan.
Oh, okay.
And
I was not aware of this.
Yes, and there is, it's worth reading because the police, and I'm drawing a blank on his name now, but because I had not planned to talk about this, but anyway, he will not let Ray watch and this is during the Christopher Eccleston era. And the Tennant era, kind of. That's this area. He would not let them watch the Eccleston till they started watching the old ones.
Nice.
And so they would have to sneak in watching the class because Ray, being 13, had no interest in watching these old episodes. So she would have to sneak in. And I was able to meet Lisa at a book signing, and Eccleston is her doctor. She actually. And so there's a whole subplot about the Doctor in this first book, the Spellman Files. So it's worth watching. But I understand why someone would go, well, to really understand the modern era, you need to go back to the classic. Well, I
don't think you have to.
Exactly, and I think.
But I think if you do, it enhances it.
I totally agree.
Your appreciation.
And I think this is hopefully what we're doing with this podcast and to other things is we're going, look, you can start with Capaldi and go forward. Right. Matt Smith is a great kicking off. I mean, you can start at any Doctor, but there is something about having a very wise guide Charles Skaggs, and saying, okay,
What?
I want you to watch some of these classics,
Yeah.
and then you can see the texture and the nuances of this modern era, because everyone who's written and showrun for the modern era loved the classics, and they wanted that in new storytelling, but with a reverence to the old.
Right. And I think that the no one says is exactly something I wanted to bring up. So thank you for bringing that up. But yeah, so when you do watch, after watching these, you watch these newer episodes and you get to appreciate the subtleties a little more. And you kind of put it in that little historical context, like, oh, well, there's this history that maybe like before I didn't get the first time I watched this story, but if I rewatch it, and now that I've watched the older stuff, I can appreciate it more.
And somebody just recently talked about on Facebook, I think it was David Gerard from Trouble with Tribbles fame and so many other books.
Yeah.
He talked about someone watching the original Stagecoach with John Ford's John Wayne, and you would go, wow, what a cliche movie, because it's got the hooker with a heart of gold and the
Right.
evil banker. But the idea was, no, that was done first and done uniquely. So, and what I love about this, and then we'll move on, is I don't have to watch a classic Who is almost, well, you have to study the history to really understand. No, this is pure, it's fun in its own way.
Exactly.
It is
You don't have to, but it's fun to do it.
Yeah, it's a great episode. There's a great story. This was an entertaining 4 episodes. This was a cool. You got to meet Victoria. You get to see Jamie being Jamie,
Yep.
the Doctor and his charm and his superiorness, and then after you watch the episode, you go, wow, there's a little bit of Matt Smith right there,
Right.
and there's a little bit, there's Rory and a male companion, and Victoria, and this whole, you just kind of enjoy the experience even more.
Yeah, you get those old school, like the inspirations for the modern era.
Yes,
The where like some of the characters kind of drew their influences from.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on now to our next topic: companions on ice. Jamie and Victoria. So yes. So now you can just gush all you want about Frazer Hines as Jamie McCrimmon.
He's so he is truly a man of action,
Right.
and he doesn't feel, he is a true quote unquote companion.
Right.
He follows the Doctor. The Doctor is the leader, but he will take his own mind. He speaks out. He truly thinks of him as, an older brother or an uncle or whatever you want. I mean, there is a respect, but also a feeling of equal.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't get as much from Victoria this time because I think,
well, it is her first
yes.
story in the TARDIS. You like traveling.
Yes. And
her
so
second episode, her second story overall. But yeah, so it's very early in their relationship.
It is, but she certainly has potential.
Yeah.
We do, as we talked about, get the great moment between her and the Doctor.
Yeah.
About her father, and
there was a moment I liked where I was noticing this on the rewatch that where she gets a gun and shoots a Cybermat.
Yes.
And it's just like, she's a perfect shot. Like it doesn't like take her a few shots to hit the thing. She hits it with her first shot.
Yes.
So obviously she's had some skills, which is interesting considering her Victorian background. That apparently she's a really good shot.
Yeah, and she's really, once again, smart. And so yeah, I liked both of them.
Yeah, and I think I think she wanted to be more active, but if you notice, there's a bit of sexism in this episode.
Right.
Where you've got everybody saying, well, the women can stay up here in the main lobby of the tomb, and while we go down into, the catacombs.
Yeah, and it's
And because hey, you stay up here where it's safe while we men take care of this.
and it really is
And Victoria wants to go, and
right.
she kind of gets all offended because it's like, well, it's because I'm a woman, isn't it?
Yeah, and um it is the era.
Yes.
But I also made me think of that at times some people would still do that if you're not, careful. So,
Right.
and so yeah, really well done. And like I said, I thought this was a well-rounded cast,
Hmm.
and I'm interested in seeing, a couple more episodes. I'd like to see another, if we get Chime, I'd like to
Yeah.
see Victoria a little bit later in there to see what we're saying,
Yeah, I think we can do that because
Yeah.
there's definitely I don't want to say now there's like a great story called The Web of Fear,
Okay.
which I think would be great, and it
Okay.
would totally it's a lot later. It's several episodes down the road
Okay.
from this story, because
Good.
this story is only Pat Troughton's seventh story overall.
Yeah.
So it's still kind of very early in his era, and also his relationship with Jamie, because Jamie joined up with in episode 2,
Mhm.
and he
Okay.
was kind of like the background character until Ben and Polly left at episode um, 5, I believe.
Okay. Good.
So yeah,
All right. Good.
5 or 6. So yeah, there's definitely some differences there. So yeah, I think that would be a great story for us to cover at some point.
Good.
All right, so let's move on. Next topic. We will survive. The Cybermen and the Cybermats. Now, I want to get your take on the old school Cybermen. And this is pretty. I mean, this is only their third story overall, after the 10th planet uh, and the moon base. So this is very early in their creation. I mean, at this point, and this is kind of, I think this is the last episode, maybe, where they have the electronic buzzing voices that kind of, they're very electrical in tone, and so and I want to get your take on that. And it's also the first appearance of the Cybermats, very first appearance. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I liked them, and like last episode, I said the Santorans makeup looked really bad,
Right.
and but this one was better. Now, certainly the modern era with the new
Right.
technology looks
Right.
cooler, but this was not a bad.
For the time period.
Yeah, for the time period, this actually I think worked pretty well,
Yeah.
and
I think it's just because of their faces, the faceplate.
yes,
It's got this really kind of creepy, emotionless
yeah,
expression. So you're not quite, you can't see their eyes. You don't know what they're thinking.
yeah.
So it's almost like, like you're looking at a doll, a creepy doll.
Mhm. Yeah, it was, and I also thought the special effects were not bad at all. Like when they're frozen, you're seeing the
Yeah.
catacomb,
Where they get
which
where they get unfrozen and everything
yeah.
melts and they come out. Yeah.
And am I wrong? But have we not seen that? Do we not later see those catacombs in other episodes where?
We kind of get something similar. I mean, we kind of there's like in other stories where they have something similar where they're kind of like in like capsules or
Yes.
whatnot, and they get brought out.
Yeah.
I know that there's something similar in Earthshock, which we've talked about,
Right.
where they kind of burst out of those tubes, those
Yes.
storage silos,
Yes.
on that freighter during the Peter Davison story we talked about.
Mhm.
So it's kind of something similar to that. And I love the music that plays, like when they come out, that dun 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 dun.
Yes.
And it's just they're kind of like, it's kind of their like old school theme music.
Yeah, and it was
I
really
wish I actually have an MP3 of that on my iPod because I dig that music so much.
it is really well done, and um it doesn't seem cheesy, the whole um the Cybermat being left alive,
Right.
at the end. I think it's actually pretty cool that they set up.
It's very ominous, and it also kind of hints that
Yeah.
like you have not seen the last of the Cybermen.
Yeah,
It's like one of those the end dot 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 question mark.
that's exactly what I was going to say, Charles. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it looked like. And that was funny and scary, and I I love this. I love the idea that the doctor, knew what was going on, Troying, and kind of suspenseful at the end where, um, they're trying to close the thing. They're all having to push, and the character sacrifices themselves.
Right.
Now
Yeah,
is
and you feel bad for Toberman because
yes, you do.
Toberman, he's basically the muscle in this
Right.
story, and he ends up like everybody else. All the white people survive, but the black guy gets it, and he becomes a Cyberman. Starts being converted as a Cyberman.
Yeah.
So he's the one that gets kind of screwed over pretty badly in the story.
Now, I have a question. At the very beginning, when the doctor unelectrifies the fence, is
Yeah.
the implication that's the sonic screwdriver, but we hadn't called it that yet?
No, because we don't really get the sonic screwdriver until the War Games. If
Okay.
you remember, when we covered the War Games.
Yeah.
But
Because he
but
used
I-
some
but
kind
I-
of
I-
device.
But he used a device, and I guess if you want to look at it, but I mean, he doesn't pull it out and say, "Oh, this is my sonic screwdriver."
Right.
I think it was just maybe a gadget that he
Okay.
had in his pocket. Because
Okay.
sometimes he does have these little gadgets.
Right.
So I'm chalking up to a gadget more than sonic
Okay.
screwdriver. But
Very nice.
it's a fair question.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah, I think so. And one thing I also wanted to mention, doesn't it seem a little familiar with the Cybermen their little honeycomb? Doesn't that kind of remind you of something you've seen on another science fiction series, perhaps, by the name of Star Trek: The Next Generation?
Yes. Yes.
Doesn't
Very
it kind
much.
doesn't it kind of remind you of the Borg ship where you had the Borg and their little honeycombs and yeah.
I think so. Absolutely.
So
Interesting. Yeah. Well done.
yeah, so again, yeah, it's kind of pretty. It seems more than likely that the Borg were a direct ripoff of the Cybermen,
And
or at
What I-
least heavily influenced by the Cybermen.
and I don't know why. It seems like there would be more discussion of that, why it was such an influence, to share and say, that how much of a influence young science fiction writers,
Right.
got out of watching the show.
Yeah,
I don't know.
and I think this is one of the stories that also influences a lot of Doctor Who writers.
Yes, I could see
Right.
that.
Because I think you see a lot of the themes in like other Cybermen stories, but just all the other stories in general.
Well, right, and what we said earlier, how many times do we see this select group of people all isolated facing something?
Right.
It makes for one, it's a pretty self-contained story.
Right.
Two, you don't have to have a lot of sets, and it gives you. I mean, it's certainly not a bottle show, but it
Yeah.
is this. It
Well,
gives you a really great.
Yeah, and being a tomb, it's kind of claustrophobic because you're trapped in this tomb.
Yes.
And you've got these creatures that especially when they get down the hatch.
Yeah.
To the lower levels and they can't get out. So it's just like, oh crap, we're screwed because all right, the Cybermen are coming awake and we can't get out. Oh crap.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. So anything else you wanted to talk about this story before we move on?
No, I like I said, I think it was a really good story. I was really happy with it. It was entertaining. It kept me I had it on my iPad, and what was funny is
Yeah.
I would I'm gonna go get coffee, so I would keep the iPad playing because I
Right.
was really engaged in it. So yes, a very well done story. Good
So what
choice.
you do? Bring the iPad with you as
Yes,
you were
I did. I went. I did. I did. Like walking into the kitchen, playing
Yeah.
that, and then I'd pause it if I needed to do something and play it back. So,
That's
yeah,
funny.
really well done.
Well, I'm glad it held your attention. I'm glad you enjoyed
Yeah.
it. All right. So let's move on to favorite quotes of the episode, one of which you've already stolen from me.
You can say it again if you want.
No, that's okay. I won't.
You get first.
All right. All right. So I'll go ahead. One of my other quotes, and I kind of mentioned this before, is it's this exchange early on between Eric Klieg and the Doctor, where Klieg goes, "But how did you know in the first place?" And the Doctor replies, "Oh, I used my own special technique." Klieg responds, "Oh, really, Doctor? And may we know what that is?" He's all snotty about it. And the Doctor replies, "Keeping my eyes open and my mouth shut."
That was on my
Burn.
list.
Burn.
Yes, burn. Okay, so here's where you clearly see where this, I think, in my opinion, Matt Smith would have picked up this.
Mhm.
Is it's very early in the episode, and the Doctor says, "You look very nice in that dress, Victoria." And she goes, "Thank you. Don't you think it's a bit..." And the Doctor finishes her sentence, "A bit short? Oh, I shouldn't worry about that. Look at Jamie's."
I
And
love that.
Jamie, hey, I'll let you know that. Oh, I. It just was.
Yeah, he starts to get almost offended, and he's like, "Oh, okay, you got me.
Yeah.
You got me."
Hmm.
So that's I love that exchange. And how great I know it's not a quote, but how great was it? I hope you caught this. Like when the Doctor starts to enter the tomb at the beginning, he walks through the doors, and he thinks he has Victoria by the hand, and he has Jamie by the hand.
Yes.
And they kind of look at each other for a moment, and he dropped the hand and looked like awkwardly off to the like each one of them looks away from the other really awkwardly.
Hmm.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny.
The other, I love when Toberman blocks the Doctor's path,
Yeah.
and Jamie's like, "Hey, let the Doctor pass, or I'll..." And then Toberman just kind of looks this and he, "Yes, well,
Yeah, because he kind of grabs the Doctor
yeah.
by the collar, and he's like, "Oh, okay, you do what
yeah,
you want.
yeah, exactly."
You go right ahead. We're all fine here now. We're
Mhm.
good." Yeah, that was great. That was great. All right, so do you have any other quotes?
And I know I'm stealing this one from you, but when the Doctor and Clegg have this, don't you see when this is going to mean to all the people who come to serve Clegg the All-Powerful? Why, no country, no person would dare to have a single thought that was not your own. Eric Klein's own conception of the way of life. Brilliant. Yes, yes, you're right. Master of the world. And the Doctor's like, "Well, now I know you're mad. Just wanted to make sure."
You can see any of the Doctors delivering that line.
Oh, you can. It's just so perfect.
Yeah, it is. And actually, I didn't have that one.
Okay.
But I did have a different. I did
Okay.
have a different one. I got one last one here.
All right.
The Doctor says to Jamie, this is after, I guess, one of the like he laid that cable around, and
Right.
he kind of short circuited the Cybermats
Mm-hmm.
to protect the group. He goes, "The power cable generated an electrical field and confused their tiny little minds or metal minds. You might almost say they've had a complete mental breakdown." And then Jamie's like, "Oh," and then the Doctor apologizes, like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Jamie."
Yes, I love that one. And the other one I thought you were going to say is when the Doctor says, "Jamie, I hope you made those ropes secure." "Oh, the king of beasties himself could not get out of that one. Good." And then the cyber controller just gets out of it.
Mhm.
And the Doctor, "Jamie, remind me to give you lessons in tying knots sometimes."
Yes. Yeah, that was great. So
Their relationship is so lovely.
it is. And it's like they're brothers, best friends, or whatever,
Yeah.
and they just play off each other really, really well.
Yes.
And and of course, with Jamie being there for like 99% of the Second Doctor era, it's great. There's lots of great moments between those two.
Mhm.
All right. Any other quotes?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Moving on to rating. What is your rating for this story? I'm guessing it's pretty high.
I'm giving this 9 tasty food pellets or
Nice.
cubes, right? It just
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah. Victoria was not very happy about that chicken that she was served
No, she's
by Captain.
yeah, like what is this?
Like I asked for chicken and she gets this
Mhm.
little pellet thing or cube or whatever and
Right.
like a bouillon cube.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I thought it was pretty funny. She's like, I guess I'm not very hungry after all.
Yeah.
All right. I also gave this. We're actually in sync this week. I gave this one 9 out of 10 electrified tomb doors.
Good, good, good.
So I enjoyed this one as well. It's a classic. It's one of those like if you're gonna watch Classic Who and you're gonna watch you're up for some black and white Classic Who, it's kind of like one of the best ones you could pick.
Yeah,
It's a really great story.
yeah, and I don't be afraid of
It's fun.
the the black and white. I mean,
Yeah.
it is just
Right.
it is just it moves well. This is a really
Yeah.
um
Just because it's black and white doesn't mean it's bad.
yeah, and it's
Take
also
case in point the movie Casablanca.
right.
Okay.
And this is also a very accessible story. Sometimes you go, well, I just don't know. This is a wonderful quote unquote standalone episode where if you forget the first few minutes where you're like, who are these people? What's Victoria coming on? Where did they just come from? But
Yep.
you get into the story immediately, and so I really, really love this one.
Okay, great. I did too.
Good.
All right. So, any reverse the polarity on your end, or should I just
No,
go?
no, I'm gonna count on you. One day I'm gonna surprise you with this.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, I tried to. Now, I tried to come up with something unexpected for this one, but I think you'll kind of see the connections. Obviously, we're gonna go back for my reverse the polarity segment this time
Yes.
to 2011. The Matt Smith story, Closing Time,
Ooh, yes.
which is episode 12 from series 6, written
Mhm.
by Gareth Roberts. And this one is set 200 years after the 11th Doctor left Amy and Rory in the God Complex, the previous story,
Right.
where he's going on his little farewell tour of friends because he knows that, there's his death coming up that was depicted in The Impossible Astronaut at the beginning of the season.
Right.
So he's going on this little farewell tour, and he stops to see his old mate Craig Owens from The Lodger, um, played by the host of the Late Late Show,
Right.
currently on TV, and who's now living with his girlfriend Sophie and raising their baby Alfie, aka Stormageddon, Dark Lord of All,
Yes.
which I still love.
Yes.
I love that name. So the doctor, like he's hanging out with Craig, he's getting ready to go, but then he notices this strange electrical disturbance in the area, and of course decides to investigate. With Craig's help, the doctor enters this department store after hours and catches a Cybermat. And obviously, this is the first appearance of the Cybermats in the modern era. So this is the big connection I'm hinting at. So we go from the first appearance in the classic era to the first appearance in the new era. Okay. So the Cybermats have been siphoning off small amounts of energy for a spaceship. And the Doctor also encounters a malfunctioning Cyberman in the building's basement. So back at Craig's house, while the two are distracted, the Cybermat reactivates, of course, Mr. Bitey. And the Doctor reprograms Mr. Bitey to track down the Cybermen signal so he can locate the source of the spaceship. The spaceship actually turns out to be sitting below the department store underground, accessed by a tunnel from the changing room. Not sure how that tunnel was constructed unless the Cybermat was really, really hungry. The Doctor's captured by the Cybermen, of course, who tell them that their ship crashed long ago, but with new energy, the ship will soon have enough power to convert the human race into Cybermen. Craig follows the Doctor into the tunnel, but of course gets also captured and placed into a conversion machine, just like poor Toberman in Tomb of the Cybermen. Alfie's cries over the closed-circuit television echo throughout the ship, and Craig, encouraged by the Doctor, fights and reverses the conversion process. The rest of the Cybermen, because they're linked to Craig, painfully experience the emotions they have repressed from Craig's struggle, and their circuits start to overload. The Doctor and Craig escape via the teleporter as the ship explodes, the blast contained by the cavern. And everybody, the day is saved.
Yeah, a great episode. Good choice. The Next Doctor is one of my favorite
Right.
Cybermen episodes, and
I was considering that one.
yeah, and so one of my favorite Christmas specials that isn't Christmassy.
Right.
You know, I usually like the real Christmassy ones, but that's
it's
one
kind
of
of Christmassy.
Yes, it is.
You've got snow, and you got the Jackson inviting the Doctor over for Christmas dinner. And whatnot.
Yeah, that's so a great episode, and it's nice to see that the Dalek by far is the Lex Luthor of the Doctor Who universe.
Well, I would consider the Master the Lex Luthor.
Okay, yeah, good enough.
And I would consider the Daleks kind of like the I want to say like Dark Side and the New Gods, I guess, or something.
Okay,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know. Just like a really really dangerous alien race.
But the Cybermen hold their own.
Yes, they do.
I think they are a very good villain, and well done. It's awesome.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So next time on Next Stop Everywhere, we're going to do something a little different. We're hoping to discuss the very first episode of Class, For Tonight We Might Die, which features Peter Capaldi reprising his role as the 12th Doctor. And if you've seen the trailers for this episode by now, you know that the 12th Doctor seems to play a pretty big part in that first episode. So hopefully through the magics of the interwebs, we will be able to talk about this episode by next time. It debuts in the UK this Saturday. So if we if you come back here in a couple weeks to listen to our episode, hopefully we'll have it reviewed by then.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed that.
And if you have trouble with this, Jesse, we can always watch something else. But
yeah, no, I'm just disappointed that they weren't able to work out. Because for the longest time, right, the Doctor.
Yeah.
And
we've had a lot of Doctor
BBC.
Who stories, airing the same day, right?
Yeah. So we have, and they seem to be doing that, and
it seems like a step. It seems like a step backward because the BBC America is pushing this off until April.
Yeah, and I don't know.
And I think they're doing it because they want to air it with Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a really big mistake because a lot of people are going to probably check it out through the magics of the interwebs and watch it there.
Yeah, and
because why are we waiting? We don't. This is 2016. We don't have to wait anymore.
Right. So it's
not like when we had to wait for Doctor Who to appear on Sci-Fi back in the day.
Yeah.
Wait like a year and a half to 2 years after it aired in the UK.
Right. So we'll see what happens, but I am excited about it. I am hoping for great things, but little nervous.
Hesitant?
Yes, a little hesitant, I think.
I don't know. This trailer's at least the first trailer. I don't know how the series will be overall, but I think at least this first episode should be pretty interesting.
Good.
And I'm kind of curious about this Miss Quill or whatever her name is, the teacher that oversees the group of kids, because it seems like she seems familiar with the Doctor.
Okay, well,
in that trailer, so I'm kind of curious if there's more to her going on.
Well, let's only hope.
Yep. So
Good.
We'll find out. So we're going to talk about that, and then after that, we'll do a William Hartnell story. That's
nice.
So we can finish that off before we shift gears once again, as we try to keep changing things up and keep it fresh.
Yeah, and I want we're going to talk offline, but I really, since you've never watched Middleman,
right?
And Javier, whatever the creator said, this was an American version Doctor Who that he wanted to do. I think at least we should watch 1 or 2 episodes and discuss whether we do a whole series review or not. I'm hoping that I can convince you that, because that is truly one of my favorite series.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I can at least check out the first episode and see.
Yeah, and then decide. Yeah, there we go.
We can do
Okay.
that.
All right.
So,
Charles?
we also have, there's other stuff we could talk about, like the Sarah Jane Adventures. Or
Absolutely,
what
yeah.
So,
I
or
think that might be.
Torchwood. So
Yes.
there's other options.
And people love us talking audio dramas.
Yes, so there's always that option as
Yes.
well.
All
So
right.
I don't think we got any feedback this time.
Nope.
But Jesse, where can they reach you?
So I can be reached at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. I have a Facebook page, Jesse Jackson. You can hear me on Set Lusting Bruce. Over the next 2 weeks, depending on when this is put out, we are having special Bruce bookstore appearance episodes where people were able to get their 6 seconds talking to Bruce and picked up a signed copy of his autobiography. He does not talk about Doctor Who in it, which would have made me squeal like a little girl and would have said, "Oh my goodness, my worlds have combined." So, and we would love to hear your guys' thoughts on the second Doctor, and after we finish our classic countdown, where would you like us to hear? Charles, how about you?
Yeah, of course. Well, first I should mention that Next Stop Everywhere, you can reach us, of course, on Facebook at Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, on Twitter at Next Stop SMG on Twitter, or you can reach us, give us some feedback at Next Stop Everywhere SMG at gmail.com. I know that's a lot of letters to type, but you can reach us there. And otherwise, drop us a line. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you'd like for us to cover on Next Stop Everywhere while we have some time before April. And as for me, you can reach me at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine, or at Charles Skaggs on the Instagram, Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus, Facebook, of course, and my blog of geeky things, Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about Doctor Who and Next Stop Everywhere and Class and all kinds of stuff, as well as a lot of comics on TV and some Twin Peaks as well, judging by the name. So you can check that out, hopefully, and let me know what you think.
And you and Karen are still doing the Phantom Zone?
We are doing the Phantom Zone. Today we're going to be recording. We're going to be covering 8 episodes of shows.
And
so 8 shows we're going to cover today. So it should be a very interesting 2 hours. I'm hoping to get it under 2 hours.
No spoilers, but
Yep.
I am looking forward to hearing what you guys thought of Superman's appearance on Supergirl.
That is one of the big things we're going to be covering. And because if nothing else, the episode we're going to title that podcast episode "The Adventures of Supergirl." So we're going to be talking about Supergirl quite a bit, and Tyler Hoechlin as Superman.
And just in case anyone's worried, I loved him, and I had, I really wanted Tom Welling to get the part because he had never played it, but I got to tell you, I thought he was very charming and played it well.
Really?
So.
I think so too.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad you guys liked it.
I think so, but I'm going to leave my thoughts for episode 79 of the Phantom Zone coming soon. So yeah, check that out and let us know what you think about that as well, guys. So
yes,
hope you dig it. So I think that about does it.
I think so. And you know what? In all my time, I forgot to get a quote.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
All right. So no quote from Jesse. So we'll just say we'll see all of you again in time and space.
Yes, and we will keep hope alive. And thanks for listening, and we appreciate the support.
Yeah, thanks for supporting us, guys. And give us some more likes on Facebook. We'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.